The 18th century saw the Atlantic slave trade reach its peak. This dark chapter in human history witnessed the forced displacement of millions of Africans. European powers, driven by greed, established a system of exploitation. They viewed Africa as a source of cheap labor. This labor would fuel their growing colonies in the Americas. Ships laden with manufactured goods sailed to Africa. These goods were traded for enslaved Africans. The transatlantic journey, known as the Middle Passage, was horrific. Africans were crammed into overcrowded ships. They endured unimaginable conditions. Disease, starvation, and death were constant companions. This forced migration stripped Africans of their humanity. They were no longer seen as individuals. They were reduced to commodities. Their names were replaced with numbers. Their identities were erased. The institution of slavery thrived on this dehumanization. European nations grew wealthy from the slave trade. Sugar plantations, tobacco fields, and cotton farms flourished. But this prosperity came at a terrible cost. The cost was the suffering and degradation of millions of enslaved Africans. The experience of the Middle Passage was nothing short of traumatic. Enslaved Africans were chained together in the bowels of ships. They were packed tightly, with barely any room to move. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, vomit, and human waste. Disease spread rapidly in these confined spaces. Many succumbed to illnesses like dysentery and smallpox. Those who survived the journey arrived in the Americas physically and emotionally scarred. They were greeted by a life of forced labor and brutality. On plantations, enslaved Africans were subjected to harsh punishments. They worked long hours under the scorching sun. Their lives were controlled by their enslavers. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from their parents. The horrors of slavery left an indelible mark on generations. Despite the cruelty, enslaved Africans resisted. They held on to their traditions and beliefs. They found ways to maintain their dignity. Their resilience in the face of such adversity is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Born in 1745 in what is now Nigeria, Olaudah Equiano became a victim of this brutal system. He was just 11 years old when he was kidnapped from his home. Equiano and his sister were sold to slave traders. This marked the beginning of his harrowing journey into slavery. Equiano was transported across the Atlantic Ocean to Barbados. He witnessed firsthand the horrors of the Middle Passage. He later described the experience in his autobiography. His words painted a vivid picture of the suffering endured by enslaved Africans. Equiano was eventually sold to a plantation owner in Virginia. He spent years laboring in the fields. Despite the hardships he faced, Equiano never lost his thirst for knowledge. He learned to read and write, a remarkable feat for someone in his position. Equiano's life took a turn when he was sold to Robert King. King was a Quaker merchant who allowed Equiano to earn his own money. In 1766, after years of saving, Equiano purchased his freedom. He was determined to dedicate his life to abolishing slavery. Equiano became a prominent figure in the abolitionist movement in England. He published his autobiography, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vasa, the African, in 1789. The book became a bestseller. It helped to galvanize public opinion against slavery. Equiano's eloquent writing provided a first-hand account of the horrors of slavery. He challenged the racist assumptions of the time. He argued that Africans were not inferior. They were human beings deserving of freedom and dignity. His work played a crucial role in the fight to abolish slavery in the British Empire.